Hello there, Dr. McQueenie. It's Thursday afternoon. As I said, I was going to try and make a video. I am making a video for you in preparation for the midterm exam, which I'm going to release tomorrow at noon, and give you a couple days to find the time to take it. I thought it important that I do this because, as you know, I'm teaching this class in a face-to-face version with 60 students on the main campus at Cal State, and I'm teaching it online. And there are advantages to both. I've been doing online teaching now for almost 5 years at the University of Maryland, and I think that my methods have really proven to be very effective. It's at the graduate school and it's somewhat smaller classes. And I've become an advocate of the learning that can take place in an online environment when you can engage with the professor and with your peers in group discussions. On the other hand, there's no question that because I'm teaching both classes, I can see that my presence in the classroom every day in the face-to-face room has had a difference with these students. Most of them are pretty interested in what's going on. They feel excited about what they're learning. They've come up to me over and over again and tell me how they're getting it, and it's starting to make sense. And we had the midterm yesterday, and most people told me they thought they did quite good. So I thought that at least I could do would give you an opportunity to be on par with the discussions that I've had with them. I can't recreate 4 weeks of class discussions, but what I thought I would do was go through the review questions just like I did with them and talk you through them in the same way I did. Now, these are review questions. You have copies of them. I'm not going to give you the answers. That would be a bridge too far, but I'll put them in perspective. In some cases, I will identify what the answer is. You're going to be faced in an exam that has multiple choice questions. You're going to have to choose among very similar answers, so you're going to have to know the material. But so as to make sure that you understand the question, understand the direction I'm heading in, I thought I'd take this opportunity to try and go through in 1 or 2 15-minute tapes. Again, I just flew in last night from California to Maryland, where my home is. I have not yet been to sleep. That doesn't matter, but if I do talk fast or misspeak, please forgive me. I have to go to reception tonight, and I'll finally sleep tonight. Be the first time in 2 days. But I wanted to do this. It's really important that you get a chance to hear me talk through these questions so you understand the context and the meaning. And I will go through them rather quickly because I know you have a lot of work to do. And then at the end, I will restate exactly how we're going to post and run the exam. Let's go through the questions right now so we can get moving on. Question 1, I'm going to read them very quickly, and then I'm going to just talk about them a little bit. And if you have some follow-up questions that you want to ask in the Ask the Professor section, do it. I will try to look at them tonight when I get home. Again, I'm not going to answer the questions for you, but if there are issues of understanding what was intended, please go ahead and ask. What is meant by sovereignty? Sovereignty, as I discussed many times, is a very important concept for this class, because in this class, when we're looking for the source of all authority, why does business have to do what it does, and why does government do what it does, and if you want to influence one or the other, where do you go? The answer in the United States is that sovereignty is with the people. We're a country of popular sovereignty. The definition of sovereignty in James Q. Wilson's book, and I do recommend that you read the chapters in James Q. Wilson's book that I indicated for the class. The notion of popular sovereignty is huge because he discusses it as the highest level of authority in the nation, the level upon which there is no appeal. There's no appeal to a higher court or to a higher Congress. The answer is final. In the old days, the king was the sovereign. In 1215, the British Parliament, the House of Lords, took it from the king when they signed the Magna Carta. From that point on, the Parliament was sovereign. In the former Soviet Union, the Central Committee of the Communist Party was the sovereign, no higher authority. In this country, the issue has been that we don't have a single entity as the sovereign, but a clear reading of the Constitution tells you that we, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide the common defense, promote the general welfare, secure the blessings of liberty, ourselves and our posterity, to ordain and establish the Constitution of the United States. The people establish the Constitution, and the Constitution establishes the government. And the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution gives the people at any time the power to take, change, revise the entire government without resorting to anyone in Washington. The people in this country truly are sovereign. Throughout the 19th, 20th centuries, a national debate took place over the relationship between the federal government and the United States. What do we call this relationship? That's in Wilson. I'm not going to answer that question because it's right there. That's what Chapter 5 in Wilson is all about. Make sure you look at Chapter 5. But the key factor that distinguishes this type of government from central government structures is that the United States is among the only countries in the world where there's 20,000 different units of government, each of whom has an independent decision-making capability. And so if you're a business and you have to understand that you need a certain kind of government action, you have to know which level of government to go to, because sheriffs, for example, are elected individuals in this country. There's nobody higher than a sheriff. The sheriff doesn't have a boss except for the people. County executives don't have a boss except for the people. And very few countries are organized so that 20,000 independent units of government do not have to report to the president or the Congress or the governors of states. They're independently elected people. And that's key to understand about the system that we have. Number 3, what is the difference between representative democracy and direct democracy? And that's also in Wilson. And he will tell you, if you look carefully, that in a representative democracy, people do not vote on issues. Nobody in this country at the national level votes on issues. In California, you have initiatives on the ballot once in a while, but by and large, a representative democracy, you vote for people who decide on issues. It's still a democracy. The people still hold the ultimate say in the direction you're going, but in the operations of it, people do not vote on issues in a representative democracy. Number 4 describes 3 broad periods of economic development in the past 250 years. What are they? I would refer you to the book. The book has a lot of interesting historical nuggets, and all I'm going to suggest now is that I would refer you to page 22 in the book, where there is a nice chart, and that chart, basically, if you study it and understand it, will give you the answers to the question. I want you to have the context. We're talking about the eras. I think it's area. I'm sorry. It should be ERA, eras of development in this country. And there are 3 broad ones. Be sure you know what they were, and be sure you know how they intersect with the various types of governmental action he's talking about. If you look at that chart, understand the chart, you'll do a pretty good job on the exam. And then once again, if you look at the various things that happened during those eras on number 6, you'll see the promotion of selected industries and the expansion of government regulation occurred in which area. It's right there. Take a look at it and you'll know it. Number 7, they need to describe 3 models of government business that best describe government and business interaction and democracies. This one's a little tricky because one of the problems with Lane's book is that he's got many different models for many things. He's got 3 of these, 4 of those, 6 of these, 10 of these, 9 of these. It's hard to remember them all. But this one is pretty fundamental, so I'll tell you the models I'm looking for. I'm looking for the models that deal with the relationships between government and business in a capitalist model, in a market model, and in a stakeholder model. Those are 3 models that he uses to describe how government and business interact at the big level. Try to understand the difference between those, and try to understand in which of those models the government plays the biggest role, and in which of those models government plays the smallest role. And you'll do well on the exam. What's the primary difference, number 8, between a parliamentary democracy and a presidential democracy? Give an example of each. I think you know that very easily. The primary difference we just talked about is that in a presidential democracy, you know the people vote for the president. Nobody ever voted for Winston Churchill or Margaret Thatcher or Tony Blair. That's a very interesting dilemma when people oftentimes in this country yearn for a parliamentary democracy because Britain and Japan seem to be so much more efficient in the way they run their government. One of the things that makes us inefficient is that the people do engage in government at all levels. We vote for a president. It's almost inconceivable that Americans would allow a reform in which we could not vote for the president anymore. And yet in all of the other parliamentary democracies in the world, they don't vote for the president. They vote for their member of Congress, 1 vote. That member of Congress goes to London, forms a parliament, and the majority party in parliament, that's what they call a parliamentary government, chooses the prime minister. Okay, the people have nothing to do with it whatsoever. And so when you hear people talk about British democracy with some sort of envy, just ask them the question, would you be comfortable if you never got to vote for a president again? We need to understand a little bit more about how we do things in this country and why. Number 9, what's the word that describes the U.S. government's alleged AT&T What's the word that describes what the U.S. government alleged that AT&T had become by the 1990s? I don't need to tell you that word, but there's a big box game that you probably played as a kid that gets you there. It's a function of the antitrust policy area. Read it, Chapter 9 in Lane. Also, Chapter 9, what type of policy governed the government action in the AT&T matter? I just gave you the answer on that. Number 11, what was the primary charge for AT&T, primary change, I'm sorry, for AT&T as a result of its agreement with the U.S. Justice Department? There's a little box in that chapter, in that book, that is a case study on what happened to AT&T. AT&T at the time was the only phone company. It was a very simple world. Everyone had an AT&T phone. Everyone dialed the same number. Everyone paid the same bill. There wasn't a lot of gadgets. There's one big black phone in your living room or your kitchen. When the breakup took place, all of that changed. So specifically, there were some fundamental changes for the big company, and I'd like you to understand what that was and be able to address this question. Number 12, government interacts with business by creating a favorable or unfavorable business environment. Identify at least other categories of business and government interaction. Now, this was a question that we dealt with at length in the face-to-face class, but we talked about the variety of ways that government and business interact, and all you have to do is think about them. But to give you some structure, we actually had a class debate, and the class identified them, and they have to do with the various kinds of relationships. So when you think of government and business, what I want you to do is think of the things you know government does where it's tied with business, so we can begin identifying what this universe of activity called government business looks like. They certainly create unfavorable or favorable business decisions by controlling monetary policy and fiscal policy. But they also, I'm sure you know that people that you know or people in your family work for companies that contract with the government. Government does the far majority of its work through government contracts, and so there's an official business relationship with them. In many ways, government competes with the private sector. When you think about the role the post office has with FedEx and UPS. And in the world that Mark Garinger is talking about with mega communities, there's an increasing need for government to want to collaborate with business on shared objectives. We can't do this by ourselves, but together we can do that. The space program is one of those. Many energy projects have a shared business government role in them as well. Usually the high-tech areas do that. So those are among the things that I'm looking for in that question. You'll have some choices. It'll be multiple choice, and you can reason through the answer. Number 13, Laney discusses the extent to which the government provides a favorable environment to business. Which countries does he compare? You know that answer. I'm not going to give them to you. That's in Chapter 9. It's the same 5 countries in every chapter. You should know the 5 countries that he compares all the way through the book. Excuse me. Number 14, rank the countries mentioned by Lane in terms of this favorable business environment. Same chapter, same place. 15 is a fun question. What's the Fed? You better know the official name of the Fed. I'm not going to tell you. People say it wrong a lot. You're going to be asked to specifically identify the official name of the Fed, what it is, what's its primary function, what was it put in business to do, how does it get involved in the economy, what's the title of its highest officer, and you should know the name of its current officer and the officer that preceded her. Describe the organization, the national organization I'm talking about, at the highest level. Where is the Fed? How many offices? Don't have to know the cities, just the number of the offices, and the basic structure at the very top of the organization. Is it 1 bank? Is it 10 banks? Is it 30 banks? Is it various regions? Is there a structure beneath that? Just understand what that is. It's in the book in Chapter 10.